Okay, you're live. You can begin now. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. Today is September 23rd, 2021. If we can please have a roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Budwig,
Present. Thanks.
Vice Chair James,
Present.
Commissioner Lamb,
Present.
Commissioner Maraldi,
Present.
Chair Putman,
Present.
Commissioner Wills is absent, Commissioner Schwartz-Mannock.
Present.
Great, thank you. And do we have any public comment that's been received?
No, Chair Putman, no public comment has been received.
Great, thank you. The first item on the agenda is to approve the draft summary meeting minutes from our meeting scheduled June 23rd, 2021. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review them. I know it was some time ago. And if so, may I have a motion to go ahead and approve those minutes?
This is Commissioner Maraldi. I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Great, thank you. And do we have a second, please?
Vice Chair James, I have a question.
Yes.
One item has the name of Dennis without a last name attached. For completeness in the minutes, do we have a last name? This was, I believe, item 2 in the.
Yes, I see on page, it's on the second page.
Thank you, Chair Putman, Vice Chair James, members of the commission. We can make sure that we get that corrected before the minutes get approved.
Then Vice
with
Chair
your
James,
with
I
your
second.
approval.
I second.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And can we do a vote, please, Brandon?
Commissioner Budwig,
Yes, thank you.
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamb,
Yes.
Commissioner Maraldi,
Yes, thank you.
Chair Putman,
Yes, thank you.
and Commissioner Schwartz-Mannock.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The meeting minutes have been approved pending the addition of Dennis's last name. Thank you. Item agenda number 2, Scottsdale Water, Colorado River Tier 1 shortage.
Chair Putman, members of the commission, this is an item that we're bringing before the commission, and we have Gretchen Baumgartner here from Scottsdale Water to present. Regarding tonight's item, we'll be confirming receipt of public comments on this agenda item. We'll have a presentation, then allow for information and discussion by the commission. We have not received any public comment, and I'll turn it over to Gretchen.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for inviting me here tonight. My name is Gretchen Baumgartner. I'm the water policy manager here at Scottsdale. My job is to manage our water resource portfolio and advise to leadership on water policy and manage our water conservation staff and the programs. Next slide, please. So before I kind of jump into our supply and Colorado River, I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes up Scottsdale. As you know, we're long and skinny. We have current population around 255,000 people with a MAG build out projection of 311,000 people. So we're still growing. One of the things we need to count for and when we're planning for water resources and our conservation program is what's the makeup of our customer classes, and then how many customers we have. So as it stands currently right now, we have 93,000 meters in our system. That is overwhelmingly single family residents. So when we're talking about planning for this or communicating with those folks, we need to understand that we have a large single family resident population. But on the flip side of that, when we talk about water deliveries, why our commercial and multifamily only make up about 6% of those meters, they make about 15% of our water deliveries. So they're a larger customer single by single. And so that's really important when we talk about how we communicate to those folks and then how we plan for the growth in some of those areas. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the 2020 deliveries. And I brought this up because I want to showcase the diversity of our portfolio. Last year, we delivered about 76% of our water portfolio as Central Arizona Project Supply. We have a small portion of our SRP supply, and that water can only be delivered on project. As we're sitting here right now today in the the studio here, this is on project. So that water that we have access to can only be delivered to those lands that have rights to those. We try to keep our groundwater allotment to a minimum to be good stewards of our supply, so we can call on that groundwater necessary for drought conditions. Last year, about 3% of our supply was groundwater, and then we deliver reclaimed water to turf facilities as well as recharge. Next slide, please. So one of the main points of tonight is to talk about our Colorado River supply and the tier 1 shortage. From the last slide you saw, our portfolio is overwhelming the majority of Colorado River water. From year to year, our supply fluctuates depending on some of our other supplies, but anywhere from 70 to 79% on an annual basis, we deliver Colorado River supply. So the tier 1 shortage is really important to Scottsdale to be mindful of what's happening up there. This is an excerpt of the news briefing that happened on the tier 1 shortage. I'm just going to quickly read the Arizona Department of Water Resource and Central Arizona project press release. We are working collaboratively with Arizona stakeholders and basin states to deploy more adaptive measures consistent with the drought contingency plan and associated agreements. At the same time, ADWR and CEP will continue to work with partners within Arizona and across the basin to develop and implement long-term solutions to share the risk we face on the Colorado River now and into the future. Next slide. So that's a really important statement because Arizona is not the only user of the Colorado River. There are 7 basin states, and that's broken down into upper and lower basin. And so we're one of the lower basins. We're Arizona, California, and Nevada. And so this is a figure I grabbed from CEP. It showcases at each different tier the reduction in Arizona supply, as you can see by the big bubbles, as Lake Mead, which is the governing reservoir body that triggers those shortages on the system. As Lake Mead falls in water elevation and lower, those reductions are increased, as you can see in the increasing bubbles. One of the components I'd like to talk about shortages, we've been in a tier 0 for a number of years. So we've already been taking some of the cuts. This tier 1 is an additional cut. Next slide, please. So some of the things that led to a tier 1 shortage on the Colorado River system. The system itself has been experiencing a 20+ year drought. It's been basically a historic drought, one of the driest periods on the 22 period of record. And beyond this abnormal period of dryness, there's increasing evidence of warming climate, which is a process of aridification. So there is some evidence that some of this is not necessarily going to be abnormal as we move into the future. And the third component that stresses the system is what's called a structural deficit. When the system was allocated originally 100+ years ago, it was one of the wettest periods on record. And so the water that was divvied up amongst the 7 basin states was not what we're seeing the hydrology in the last 100 years, and what's not what's being projected into the future. So it's over allocated. Next slide. So one of the things that triggers the tier 1 shortage is the Bureau of Reclamation 24-month projection studies. And the big one is the August one, which obviously happened last month. And this is the one that does the official trigger for the official shortage. And so the projection is August, but it's out the next 24 months, and it projects to January 1 of 2022. And if Lake Mead falls below the elevation of 1075, that triggers the tier 1. So this graphical here is the projections that the Bureau put out. The blue dotted line is the 90th percentile of hydrology. This is wet hydrology modeled. The middle green one is your 50th percentile, and the red one is your 10th percentile, which would be a dry year. So as you can see, the band is pretty narrow. You can see even in the wet conditions over the next 2 years, we will continue to project it to be below the 1075. So there's projections that over the next 2 years, we'll continue to stay in that tier 1 and have those cuts. There is increasingly evidence that there's potential for even deeper cuts. It goes from tier 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. So there are some probabilities that it could continue to decrease, and we'll have to take deeper cuts as a state and also as a 7 basin states. So next slide. So what does this mean for Scottsdale? The figure on the right is the, if you work in water resources, you've seen the priority stack many times. So water rights in the Western US are prioritized in what's called first in time, first in right. If you get there first, you have a senior right. If you get there after that, your right is junior. So as cuts get deeper, and the first cuts initially, junior right holders get the cut first, and senior right holders get the cuts last. So the red portion on the bottom of that stack, those what's called a priority 3, those have very senior rights on the CEP system. The upper portion of that, what we'll call an excess, other excess or ag pool or NIA priority, have a junior rights. So the first cut in January 1, 2022 will be 512,000 acre feet. And an acre foot is what sounds like 1 acre foot, 1 acre a foot deep. And so 512,000 acre feet is about approximately a third of the CEP supply. However, it is projected to go, you can kind of see the gray arrow, which is projected to be where the cuts will taken. And so that'll basically kind of cut about 50-60% of the NIA pool. Now, I've color coded Scottsdale supply to kind of mirror the priority pool that CEP has. And the overwhelming majority of the Scottsdale water rights that we have for the Central Arizona project are either what's called M&I or Indian priority. So in a tier 1, the majority of our water doesn't get touched because we have more of a senior right. Now the NIA pool, and it's called non-Indian agriculture, but that's just an old term that doesn't necessarily mean what it says. It's just a historical nomenclature. Our NIA water is about 4% of our total CEP supply, and the rest of it being a little more of a senior supply. So I showcase this slide to show you that although a tier 1 cuts completely into the agricultural pool and a portion into the NIA pool, it doesn't currently affect Scottsdale in a great means. So, and I'll get to a slide that I talk about almost quantifications of assumptions of what potentially could happen to Scottsdale. Next slide, please. So regardless of whether Scottsdale has some really great senior priority rights to the Colorado River, we recognize that this is a really important point in Arizona's history and future. And every provider has to have what's called a drought preparedness plan. We call our drought management plan as per statute by the Department of Water Resources. And this is a tiered plan that we can use communication tools and very triggered responses. And we have recommended to the city manager Thompson, to trigger our drought management plan in stage 1. And this is a communication plan. So this is not necessarily to cause alarm, but to heighten our communication message, both internally and externally to our customers, because it's important that every single customer, both residential and commercial, understand the importance of what's happening on the Colorado River and to be the best stewards of our resource now and into the future. And what happens with the drought management plan is also triggers what's called the drought management team, which is a collective team of different division and department heads. So we can all collectively talk about a holistic approach to best manage and find tools to move into the future, to talk to our customers and build communication tools, as well as find tools internal to the city so we can be best stewards of our own water. Next slide, please. So this is a table that we built in our drought management plan, and this is based on some of the assumptions we have based on our water rights and our priorities. So basically, what it's saying is in each one of the tiers, what we assume the potential reduction could be on our water rights. So what I want to caveat here is there are some mitigation strategies that are available, and that the state is talking about further implementation and mitigation strategies. But outside of those mitigation strategies, we still want to understand what this impact to our resources actually looks like, because we understand that this shortage is not just something that's going to happen this year or next year. the conditions on the Colorado River watershed are something that's going to be happening for a long time. And we want to understand the long-term impacts to our supply at every tier. So right now, under a tier 1 supply, we expect, outside of mitigation strategies, we expect the supply to be cut by 3%. I have a number of things here. 3%, or what's called 2 million gallons per day, or 2,300 acre feet. And it kind of goes down from the different tiers and how you can see the increasing percentages of cut to our supply. So next slide, please. One of the things I want to showcase here is what we have done to plan for this point in reduction. So right now, we have a supply of Central Arizona Project water that is above and beyond what we actually send to our customers. And what do we do with that extra supply? We put it in the ground like a savings account. Like any of us would get our paycheck, we have a percentage of it that goes into our savings account that we use for our rainy day or non-rainy day fund, that we use for our kids' college tuition, or we use for a car that's going to break down, or we use for a new roof, or use for any number of things that we need. We plan for that in our savings account. And that's exactly what that is. We have been putting water underneath the ground to be able to draw on when necessary over decades. And so this table is just showcasing what we've done for the last 5 years. And so we recharge both Central Arizona Project water that we have rights to, and then also our treated wastewater, which we call effluent in the industry. We do recharge up at our water campus for the effluent and some of our Central Arizona projects. So we do that inside of our service area, then also around the valley. So what's important to showcase here is our savings account on average of the last 5 years has been around 15,000 acre feet. If you go back to can you go back to the last slide, Brandon? You can see in a tier 3, our savings account helps us out there. So as we stand, if a tier 3 happens in 1 year, we're fine, we're good. We've been putting that away. We have a savings account. What we do in water is we're trying to plan for the long term, is how long is a tier 3 going to last? If it happens, when it happens. Those are really hard questions to answer. And majority of people don't always know the answer to that. The uncertainty in the hydrology is still unclear. Next, you can go back to the next slide. But I just wanted to showcase is we have a very robust savings account to be able to draw on when we need it. Next slide. So before I go into some of the ideas and schemes that we have been working on, I just wanted to talk about the demand that has happened in the last 15, 16 years, and then the water supply, and then how many service connections we've grown over the last 15 years. And this is actually a common slide that most providers have. Over the last 15 years, the majority of providers, including Scottsdale, demand has gone down. And a lot of that has to do with new plumbing upgrades, more conservation by folks. As you see, the population and the number of service accounts increase. So our conservation and our mindfulness is really working. You should, if you notice, 2020 is a really different year. COVID messed everything up, including our water supply. People tended to use, and we're not the only one, people used a lot of water. The summer was very hot, very dry. The rain did not fall, and it was COVID. People used water. So that was an anomaly year. Next slide. So some of the responses that we've been working on at Scottsdale Water, and then working with our partners across other divisions, we've activated our drought management plan to further our conservation messages, both internally and externally to the city. We have that drought management team that we've involved and formulated and are talking through some really innovative solutions. We're also increasing our what's called ASR, which is Aquifer Storage and Recovery well capacity up at the water campus. I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with our innovative water campus where we advanced treat effluent and recharge it. We are drilling 4 new recharge wells to further our recharge underneath our service area. And this is really important because when we call on our well system, we want to be able to make sure that our water levels are healthy. So we're investing millions and millions of dollars to make sure that we have the infrastructure to utilize those extra supplies we have right now. We're expanding some of our recycled water recharge and our irrigation system. We're talking with some irrigation and turf users to maybe potentially use some of our extra treated effluent on their turf facilities. And then we're expanding what's called our AMI meter network. And this is actually really exciting. My team is a part of this collaboration. So right now your water meter, you get your water bill, right? And you look at it and you're like, okay, that's what I used last month, or you just pay it and you don't look at it. The automatic meter infrastructure system will look at water on an hourly basis. So you can more finally, in a finer resolution, understand how you use your water. And then we've integrated that in the Water Smart portal. So you can see that. We're in the middle of the implementation. So about 35% of Scottsdale has an AMI meter. If you guys don't know about it, I can send an email out to kind of showcase where you can find this information and how you sign up. But this is something I even use as a Scottsdale resident. I can see when my irrigation goes off in the morning and how much it uses. And it's really eye-opening to see how much your irrigation system uses. And we have some staff members that can come out to your home and talk through if you have some questions on whether you're being efficient and your timing of irrigation and how you can upgrade your irrigation knowledge to appropriately use water. Next slide. So this is the Water Smart portal that we're talking about. It has a high water use notification and bill notification. We're working on implementing a leak alert. So there's an algorithm in it that if you go over a certain threshold for a 72-hour period, it'll send you a notification that says, hey, we think maybe you have a leak. Maybe you need to check it out. So we're hoping to implement that this winter. We need to do some vetting so we don't scare a bunch of residents, and we want to make sure the threshold is appropriate and not overwhelm our customer service folks. So hopefully we're going to do that this winter. Next slide. One of the things people talk about when we talk about drought is, well, what is the city doing? Over the last several years is we're doing internal facility audits. Over the course of 2020, we did 22 of our very large facilities. That includes just going through every nuance of what the facility is, how they're using water. A lot of it actually comes from the cooling towers. You'd be surprised that these giant cooling towers and how to use them efficiently can really save water. So we're working with facilities in ways that they can save water and then potentially build some projects into the next budget cycle to find ways to implement some of these projects and save water as a city. Next slide. This is a really exciting program that I'm excited that my staff is doing. And this is one of the programs that's kind of in its infancy and we need to work on it. But this is working with our HOAs, and the HOAs, we love our HOAs and they have a lot of turf. And you'd be surprised that sometimes they let their landscapers do what they do and they don't always know how efficient they're doing water. So what we'll do is we'll meet with an HOA, we'll talk with them, we'll identify which meters they are using for their exterior, and we'll give them a budget and overlay it with what their actual meter usage is. You can kind of see there's this budget and then there's this 5-year meter usage. And we'll go and we'll talk with the HOA association, say, hey, you can save 20%, 30% of your water if you just use your water efficiently. And that also saves you money. I know HOAs, some of their biggest bills are your water bills. So this is something that I'm really excited about and I really, really hope to grow. We just, we have a challenging time communicating sometimes and getting those HOAs interested, but we're really hoping to grow this program. Next slide. So along with that, we are doing a pilot with those HOAs. This is just, we got that last budget cycle. And so this is just a pilot where there's a software application where it takes that budget and it integrates with our billing system, and it'll spit out the budget and what's been used in that month and actually send it to the HOA and send it to the landscaper and say, hey, this month you're 20% over. You need to kind of dial that back, or hey, you know, this is where you're at. So it kind of keeps, so it's not just here's your budget. Now you go out the door and have fun with that. We're going to keep tabs on you. You're going to keep tabs on you. And this is going to give you an update every day. So we're also excited about this pilot project, and we're going to try to get about 10 to 20 HOAs this next year. Next slide. So in closing, the conditions on the Colorado River are serious. And we have been planning for this for a long time. And water managers have known this is coming. This is coming. We've known this has been coming, and we've been talking, and it's a complicated conversation to have with providers and water right holders. But it is a serious thing, and we need to continue to plan for the future. As a Scottsdale, we're going to continue to identify opportunities to grow and communicate and build programs so our customers have the tools they need so they can use water as efficiently as possible. And we're going to continue to communicate that while we've been really good stewards in the past, and we've planned for this, it's the job of every single citizen and every single business in Scottsdale to be a part of the solution to make sure that we're resilient as possible. The next slide. Any questions?
Madam Chair? Am I doing this right this time? Gretchen, you said you were going to reach out to the HOAs. How are you going to do that?
Well,
I mean, are
we're
you gonna
building
pick certain ones or what?
That's actually a really great question. My staff right now, we have a number of HOAs that that reach out to us outside of any normal outreach that we have. But right now, we're building a messaging campaign to find ways to reach out to them. There actually are many HOAs. McCormick Ranch is a good example, or a lot of those big areas. You think that's just one HOA, and they tend to be kind of smaller HOAs, and so it is a challenge to prioritize which HOAs to reach out to and which not. And if you reach out to all of them, there's a question of whether or not they all kind of bombard staff with wanting resources. And we do have a limited amount of staff. So we're trying to go through that process right now of which ones we want to reach out to and which ones can reach out to. We have many years of experience interacting with several HOAs, and we've had good relationships, and we have a tendency to reach out with some of those first that we are familiar with.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the questions too that I kind of want to bring to this. I'm not always familiar with what the Neighborhood Advisory Commission does, but I assume you guys are neighborhoods and interact with HOAs. And I've had this conversations with other commissions. If you have an HOA that you think would be a good candidate for a program like this, please reach out to me or my staff, and we can have a conversation of what that could look like with your HOA.
I had a question similar to if someone wants to report, a code violation. Do you guys have any avenue to report a water abuse violation? If so, how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, so we have a water waste ordinance. And the easiest way to do this is Scottsdale EZ. I can send the link out to everybody, but there's an application where you just get on the app, you put in your complaint, you can take pictures. The pictures is super important because it's very helpful for us to figure out what's happening. A lot of times this is an irrigation issue and someone's over irrigating, but they'll do it at like 6 a.m. So to understand the timing of when that happens, it's easier for us to go out and talk to the contributor to the problem and talk them through it when we understand when it's happening, so we can kind of research it. But we do have staff that will, once that complaint comes through Scottsdale EZ, we have staff that goes out and figures out what's going on and then has to resolve it within that application.
That is great to know. Thank you. I had another question. Sorry, I have a couple. Yeah. Water's my jam, so I like this. Do we have any more ideas for using more reclaimed water? I know you talked about turf a couple of years ago. With the canal convergence, they had like that beer festival using the reclaimed water. Is there any ideas to start maybe having that offer to the citizens, or is it just still kind of this faux pas about having, reclaimed water being drinkable?
So we get that question a lot with some folks that actually want reclaimed water on their turfs. Like we've had a couple of HOAs that said, hey, how do I get that? And that can be a tough conversation because then you have to have that. You have to talk through the infrastructure cost and how a reclaim system or purple pipe system would be what's required to be able to take the treated effluent from the wastewater treatment plant and bring it down to a turf facility. And that is an incredibly expensive thing. You have to tear up a road and put in a pipe. And so that's not something that we've actually considered making that available. One of the other reasons why is, so we do three things with effluent. Sorry, treated wastewater, reclaimed water. One of them is we send it to 91st Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is a co-owned plant between us and 4 other cities and is located in West Phoenix. Now that water is then treated and 70% of that water is sent to Palo Verde Generating Station. So that's one use of our reclaimed water or our wastewater. The other use is it's treated up at the water campus. And so it goes 2 places once it's treated at the water campus. It goes up to the golf courses or any turf facilities that are around it, like the new soccer fields and a lot of the golf courses up north and TPC, to be utilized for the turf. And then the other use is all the recharge wells around the campus to be able to put in the aquifer. So currently right now, all of our effluent is spoken for. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that excludes future potential. So as you saw that figure in the front, we have 255,000 people in our city. We have about 60,000 people more to go. You put in a new house, 30% of that water is indoor, which means it's flushed down the toilet. So there is more potential for reclaimed water as we build out. Some of the ideas that we have kicked around in our master planning process is there a potential for what you're calling direct potable reuse, which you would take it, you would treat it, you would advanced water treat it. So you'd make sure that it was safe. That's something the industry is still wrestling with. Well, I'm going to say the industry, but I know the public is going to wrestle with it too. So there's also regulations involved that you can't do that on a mass scale right now. So the industry is trying to figure out what that looks like and what the appropriate regulatory framework is for that. So that's something that potentially could be coming down the quote unquote pipe.
I have 2 more questions. Sorry. I'll ask them at the same time. So knowing that we share water, right? Does, what Arizona is doing to protect our resources, does that at all impact, say Nevada's, they're not on board with all of these things. I mean, is there a situation where the tiers would increase and we're doing all the right things and perhaps other states aren't? And then my other question, you talk, about cuts, about some different things. Do we project the cost of water then to the Scottsdale customers to go up? You didn't mention that.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the last one because that one's going to be the easier one, unfortunately. Yes, we do project the cost of water to go up. In a very simplistic way of putting it, so there's this 336-mile canal that goes from Lake Havasu down to Tucson. Our intake is up at the our water campus. As the amount of water that is delivered in that system shrinks, the operating and maintenance cost of everything on that canal stays the same. So per unit of water, it goes up. And we've all known that. We've known that for as long as we know the shortage is going to happen. So we are planning for that. That's inside of our budget package and understanding our rate structure. Now, the stakeholders in Central Larger Project recognized that, and they had put in reserve funds to be able to soften the initial blow. So some of those things are in place. Scottsdale also recognized that. So we have our own small bucket of reserve fund to be able to soften the initial blow. So the rates go up a little slower than just jumping off the precipice. But we do see impacts to the rates. And that's something that the executive director of water has been in contact and conversations with the city manager, and we'll have to bring to council. But yep, you can expect your water bill to go up a little bit. And then the second question was a complicated one and a hard one to answer, in that there's a lot of things that go on, especially above my level, above the city's level, even at some point above Central Arizona Projects level, to the state level, to the governor and to the head of Department of Water Resources. And I would say, in my experience and my knowledge, none of the other states are not taking this serious or not doing their part. California, who has a senior priority, has been good stewards and been a part of the conversation, and have talked through, they don't have to take cuts. But they recognize that that's a dire situation. So to the drought contingency plan, they agreed to take cuts at a certain lower tier. And I suspect that as we walk through further conversations, not myself, those kind of creative things and strategies will happen within the other basin states. Everyone's going to have to be a part of the solution. And I think everyone recognizes that. As far as what could happen additionally to the cuts, that's something that the Secretary of the Interior could potentially do, and that's an uncertainty. So I have a hard time telling you yes or no.
Great, thank you.
First of all, Gretchen, it was a great presentation, really good. Just curious, you said that we're in the Salt River Project area right here. How much of the long skinny Scottsdale is in Salt River Project?
Yeah,
Or like,
can you go
what's
to
the
slide 2?
boundaries?
Not very much. Yeah, so Salt River Project is really interesting in that it's managed in a completely different manner than Central Arizona Project. It's also hydrologically speaking, a lot different of a system. We're lower in elevation, we're low in latitude. It's not susceptible to some of the well, I won't go into any in the nuances, but it's a little bit of a flashier system. So when it goes into drought, and then it can come back the next year in strange ways. So the interesting about Salt River Project or SRP territory is it's tied to the land. You can only use it on the land that has rights to it. So you can't move it around. Everything below the Arizona Canal up near below Indian Bend is on project. So about 13 to 15% of our portfolio is Salt River Project land. Now that ebbs and flows depending on what the annual allocation or multiplier is, and that's determined by the SRP board. So that does fluctuate.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Gretchen, for bringing this item to the commission. Certainly, this has been something that's been discussed thoroughly throughout all neighborhoods kind of in the community this is kind of new territory for Scottsdale, but not, as you mentioned, one that we haven't prepared for. So I certainly think that this was beneficial for the commission. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I will send an email about WaterSmart and then Scottsdale Easy.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Gretchen, if you would send that to me, and then I'll make sure it gets distributed.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And we have agenda item number 3, GAIN, the 2021 program overview. We have Joy Racing.
Chair Putman, members of the commission, this is item 3, GAIN 2021 overview. We'll be confirming receipt of public comments and then have the presentation, then allow for information, discussion, possible action. We have not received any public comment. And so Joy, please take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out here. It's so nice to see people in public again. So I like that. I am Joy Racine, and I am the Community Involvement Manager for the Citizen Service Department. And so we have a program called Scottsdale, it's Neighborhood Watch. It's been around since the 70s. It's usually in conjunction with the police department. Usually the police department's overseeing it. But we began seeing it around the early 2000s. So since about 2003, we kind of split and we kind of citizen service formed, and we thought this would be a great program that would help and make it more of a community as well as safety function. So now it's more of a partnership with the Scottsdale Police Department as well as all the other departments, but we house it here in our citizen service office. We have approximately 115 neighborhood watch groups throughout the whole city. Usually they're noticed by the sign that you see there. Many of the communities will have the block watch signs there. And we have approximately 200 captains throughout the city. The city is divided into 4 districts, so that's throughout the whole city. So if you're interested, let me know. In the past, so in part of Neighborhood Watch, one of the things that we really try to promote is getting to know your neighbors. That's the whole point of Neighborhood Watch. We feel that the more you know your neighbors and the more you're comfortable with your neighbors, then that's going to help decrease the amount of issues going on, because you're going to understand what's off about that house. Oh, those people are on vacation. I know them. So why is somebody in their house, and then you think, okay, maybe I'll call the police, and, you could help stop a burglary from happening. Never go confront them, call the police instead. But we feel that getting to know your neighbors, you start to understand your area a lot more. So so part of that program is we really hope that they have block parties. Well, pandemic hit. And having block parties and people congregating all together couldn't really happen. So last year, Jamie, who oversaw the program, had a great idea that said, instead of having a block party, why don't you picnic in your driveway? That way you can wave to your neighbors, you can still see everybody, but we will come to you and we will have a parade. And so GAIN, which stands for Getting Arizona Involved in Neighborhoods, is an annual event that we've had for years and years and years. And it always falls in October. So instead of having GAIN block parties, which we've done in the past, and I believe some of the commissioners in the past have always visited the parties as well, instead we moved to having the parades. So those are some of the pictures from last year's parade. What we do is go throughout the community, and its members and departments from police, fire, solid waste, citizen service, parks and rec, code enforcement. We all just kind of go, we choose one of the 4 parade routes, and then we decorate our cars and we follow the parade route. Because it was so successful, we had about 18, more or less, you can't really completely count, but we had about 1,800 people at the October parades coming out and watching everybody. So Jamie thought, well, that was so successful. Let's do it again at Christmas time. And she called it the Holiday Howdy. And they had about 2,000. So it started to get more involved. So she decided this year, we're still kind of in that pandemic mode, can't really completely promote block parties. So we're going to do it again. So we're hoping to get more than 2,000 this year. And so what Jamie's done is she's created 5 different routes. So our police department has divided the city into 4 different districts. District 1 goes from the south border to Osborne, then it's Osborne to McDonald, McDonald to Cactus, and then Cactus to the northern border. We do have District 3. That's more long and skinny. So she did divide District 3, which is around that Shea area. Via Linda area, she divided it into an east and west. So we did come up with 5 parade routes. And in your packet, you'll have some maps of the 5 routes. So the red on those routes is the district. And then the orange is the actual route that we're going to be following this year. So that's what's getting promoted. So if any of you are interested, Jamie is still, even though she's not with Citizen Service anymore, she took a position with the police department. She's helping us out until we can find her replacement. And so she is still overseeing this parade. So if any of you are interested in being part of that parade, I know in the past, like I said, you guys would visit our neighborhood block parties, but if you are interested in doing any of the parades, next slide. There is Jamie's contact information. Feel free to reach out to her, let her know which of the 4 areas you prefer, because you might want to pick your own neighborhood to go into, or maybe you want to go visit another neighborhood that you don't normally see. But let her know which of the maps that you would like to be a part of, and she will make sure that you get the route. Typically, she has a designated meeting spot at 4 o'clock, and then about 3:30, and the parade starts at 4, and the routes take about an hour. As you go through, they're always led by the police department, and they always have a fire engine at the end, and then your car kind of fits in the middle. And so it's a very safe route for you to do, and you can be a part of it. And then there's my contact information as well, if you want more information on Neighborhood Watch as a program itself. Any questions?
Great, thank you. I had a question. What's the date?
October 16th.
Okay, thank you.
Very important date. Any other questions?
Was that your question, Commissioner James?
Vice Chair James, do you have a question as well? Did you have a question? Or that was it? Perfect. Commissioner Budwig?
Hi, Commissioner Budwig. So all routes happen at the same time at 4 o'clock
Yes.
on October 16th.
That is correct.
Got
Yep.
it. Got it. So okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the commission, this item was initially listed as an action item. This was anticipating we were hoping to have a lesser level of transmission. in terms of COVID to allow for more interaction. And so because we're still in a high transmission, we would suggest you reaching out directly to Joy or Jamie. I would only ask the commission to please include me in any correspondence so that if by chance we all live in the same area, I can post for possible quorum just as a matter of formality. But beyond that, I'll share with the commission that last year, if the commission recalls, the commission sponsored census trailer and census awareness ahead of our decennial census. And I was the one towing the trailer that brought that awareness. But I will say it's an unbelievably fun experience to be part of the parade. It's kind of a unique experience to be chauffeured around Scottsdale by police escort, and and being able to interact with residents in a different way than you might otherwise get the opportunity. So it just might be a fun way to see Scottsdale and see really the community pride and that comes out when you would really kind of expect it the least. So just wanted to share that with the commission as a point of perspective.
And you can bring your family. So like when I was in the parade, I had my husband, I had my kids. So you can bring families in the cars with you. You don't have to go just by yourself. It is, so it does make it that family event as well.
All right. Madam Chair, unless there's any other questions, I just want to say thank you, Joy, for making the presentation this evening.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, the Neighborhood Enhancement Grant Program, overview of public applications received in the first quarter for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Brandon, please.
Thank you, Chair Putman. Yes, I'm here to bring you the NEGP requests staff has received in the first quarter of fiscal year 2020, 2021. This is a information and discussion item only. And staff has not received any public comment. So since the NIC last met June 23rd, 2021, staff received 5 requests for NEGP funding, 4 of which were ineligible based on program criteria. And I will now go through each of those for your edification. Request 1 was for landscape enhancement, which was made on June 1st, 2021. It was to provide front and rear yard maintenance. Staff had communicated to the applicant that this did not meet program requirements, that the program is based for those areas of public right-of-way to be enhanced, not on private property. So staff communicated to the applicant that though this did not qualify, there were other city programs that, such as Operation Fix-It, that might be able to address the request. And since then, the application has been made to Operation Fix-It. Request 2 at 7544 East Latham Street was made on June 6th, 2021. This request was for carport gate replacement. Also did not qualify based on program criteria, but this application was also forwarded to Michelle Holmes at Operation Fix-It, and that application has already also been made. Request 3 was for right-of-way enhancement along Shea Boulevard between 100th Street and 104th Street. That application was made on June 7th. This program did meet program criteria, but major potential project constraints, such as the amount of money it may take due to the lack of water and irrigation along that stretch of Shea on the north side, would potentially take up more than the full amount of the NEGP budget for the fiscal year. However, city staff is in coordination with right-of-way staff within the city, as well as the project applicant, to see if some resolution can be brought to this request. And if it is deemed applicable, staff will bring this back to the commission at a later date. Request 4 at 7712 East Harvard Street was received on July 26th, 2021. This was for rear yard maintenance. Again, did not meet the location and accessibility criteria. This was also forwarded to Operation Fix-It, and this application was also made to OFI shortly after. And finally, request 5 at 4522 North 66th Street was received on April 1st, 2021. This was a unique request made for a pet waste tower to be placed along 66th Street between Chaparral and Camelback Roads. That applicant resides at 4522 North 66th Street. It was communicated to the applicant that the request did not address the program requirements for ongoing maintenance, how the tower would be maintained over time, for the overall waste, replacement of the bags, et cetera. And further, 66th Street would not be a classifying street under the program criteria. However, staff is also in communication with parks staff, as well as the Office of Communication, to coordinate increased messaging via Nextdoor or other forms of communication to the immediate neighborhood to hopefully bring resolution to this request. With that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Vice Chair James.
Hi, Vice Chair James. A question going back to request number 3, which meets the criteria but would be prohibitively expensive because of piping required for watering landscaping. I noticed that the request is also for wall maintenance, which probably wouldn't be affected by that. But in view of the presentation that we had earlier today about water usage, the question is whether landscaping really needs to involve plants that require water. There's a request for landscaping here, but is that doable in terms of using, I don't know, boulders or rocks or something like that that would be attractive without using plants and without using water? For that matter, to extend this a little further, I kind of raised the question of whether we should be, when we're approving projects, whether we should be conscious of the water impact of projects that we approve.
Vice Chair James, members of the commission, thank you for the comment. With regard to the idea that a project, specifically of this applicant's request, necessitate water and how perhaps funding for this program gets expended, all plant material will need some basis of water to establish and continue growth over time, albeit doesn't necessarily require the hard infrastructure to do that. What we've tried to do is reach out to our right-of-way staff to have basically water trailers that they could contract to establish the first year of water, and then basically wean it off and just have it live off of rainwater and any other excess water that may come from the opposite side of the wall. But even in that estimate, preliminarily off the one vendor we did get an estimate from, it exceeded the total annual budget for the NEGP funding. Then that was without any hardline infrastructure at all. That was just water carrier trailers. And so we're still trying to have continued conversation with right-of-way staff to find alternative measures to help improve the character of that stretch of the roadway and still address the applicant's request. But we haven't come to resolution with that yet. We're still trying to explore continued, additional options along those lines.
Thank you. My question really is whether plants are necessary. If we're talking about improving the landscape and appearance of that strip of area adjacent to Shea, can that be done without things that require water, like boulder landscaping or something of that sort. I don't know. It's just a thought.
I was wondering about perhaps building off what Vice Chair James is saying is maybe public art of some sort. I know Scottsdale has a public art program, though I'm not all that well versed in that, but perhaps, again, going on the lines of maybe not putting in any plants, but maybe some boulders and some kind of that rust looking, like maybe what looks like a cactus or something like that, just sprinkled down the road. I do know that road and it could use some work. So that I wonder if that's a possibility or if Scottsdale's public art program is already over allocated. I don't know, but I'm just kind of curious.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the comment. With respect to that request, we can, staff can definitely bring that back for right-of-way staff to perhaps come back at our next meeting and have that discussion, if that would be appropriate.
Didn't you present something 6 months ago, 8 months ago that had more stretch? An applicant put in multiple times, like a bigger piece on that side of the road. I remember seeing a map with all the red, the yellow, the green, and people were wanting that stretch. And I was wondering how this matches up to that request, because I know that there was someone that was kept on asking for that.
Commissioner Budwig, members of the commission, with respect to that item, that was, if you recall, it was an email that was sent to the commission from a resident who I believe lived in Scottsdale Mountain, which is approximately at 136 in Violenda, making commentary on maintenance along a number of different roadways within the area and really wanted further explanation as to why some areas are better maintained than others. And so the graphic that was provided to the commission, just as a means to help illustrate the challenge in maintenance, was a graphic that showed where right-of-way is maintained by either HOA or city right-of-way staff or maintained by the adjacent property owner. We do know that this is a continually challenged area of the community. And we're even exploring further discussions with our transportation staff to have a capital improvement project along this area that might bring a more complete solution than kind of triaging it as we might, but that's also a council approved process and timeframe that would have to be budgeted for. And so like I say, we can bring back this item at least to have the conversation about how right away is managed and how we might better manage it now in consideration of this tier 1 shortage. If there's more creative solutions, I will say, Commissioner, with respect to public art, there was a NEGP funding for improvements along Thomas and 82nd Street that the commission awarded not too long ago on the north side of Thomas for, I think it was dust mitigation, but there was also drainage infrastructure that was being explored to help improve the appearance of a SRP drainage pipe that was rather large on the south side of Thomas Road. Our staff here in Office of Citizen Service, Christy Hill, previous commission liaison, is working with Scottsdale Art, as she told me just today, as a matter of fact, that they're working with Scottsdale Art to try and wrap that in some type of art that is similar to it's in the same collection, if you will, of some other public art that changes annually that we have along Scottsdale Road. One common one that comes to mind is a piece that's next to Discount Tire along Scottsdale and Oak on the northeast corner. That changes annually. So that drainage structure will, as I understand it, be in front of Scottsdale Art to consider for possible improvement sometime this spring. When we have a better idea of what the timing looks like for that, we'll bring that back to the commission as well. But I love the creativity and the thought to trying to find creative solutions. And so I don't want to discourage that in any way. I just wanted to let you know that is possible. And I also will say along the request that we're bringing before the commission in terms of why you're seeing a bulk package of them. I know in the past, as this program is kind of rolled out, you've kind of been seeing applications kind of come in onesie, twosie, and it's really hard to evaluate the merits of one application against unknown future applications. And so we're going to try and bring these back to the commission more on a quarterly basis so you can evaluate a stack of them against each other and maybe, be more judicious about how these funds get expended. I will also share that as we do receive, you can kind of tell by a lot of the requests, applicants maybe don't necessarily read the criteria. But we're trying to illustrate that we do, the program's out there, it is being looked at, it's just maybe not being evaluated as fine tooth as maybe things need to be. But as some program, we have had some requests that have come in that a staff trying to be judicious of the program's funding. If we know that there's an alternative way to address a phone inquiry, which I've had, and there's a different solution or a different bucket to find a solution for the problem, we'll go down that path as opposed to trying to use the commission's funding because we want to try and preserve it as it being really more limited to other solutions. One example that I can share with you is the southwest corner of Indian School and 64th Street, Scottsdale. I can't remember the name of the subdivision, but on the southwest corner, there was a resident who had asked for improvements to a bus shelter because, or not, I should say bus stop. There's no shelter there, but there was some frustration about riders that were sitting on their community signage. And so they wanted a bench and a trash receptacle because they were using their community signage as a trash receptacle. So commission staff worked with transportation staff to get it's called a semi seat. It's a seat that's on top of a post as opposed to a full bench, as well as a trash receptacle to try and mitigate the issue. And so that was an expense taken out of a different bucket in the city's coffers and not so much from the commission. But like I say, we're trying to further the reach of the commission's budget and really try to preserve it for some of these larger projects if the commission finds it to have really good merits and timing's right. So I hope that helps with some background on the program and what we see moving forward in the future.
Since I'm rather new, could you refresh our memory about how much of a budget we have annually and what is the cycle is it fiscal calendar? I forget.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. It's on the fiscal year and our fiscal year starts July 1st. And for the last 3 years, the council approved budget has been $30,000. You'll see on the next request, some of the larger city projects that we've had expenditures on have had the largest reach and greatest distribution as to where funds have been expended. But on some of the smaller singular projects that we've had, they've generally been in the range of between $2,000 and $4,000 each. So we're hoping that with over time, we can start celebrating. And I think that's something that Brandon and I have talked about, creating more community awareness about how these funds are expended from the commission, where they're going to, and how folks can gain access to them more on some of the social media sites, Nextdoor and others, over time as we start doing this more often. And so I hope that helps with an answer.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, the Neighborhood Enhancement Grant Proposal, Neighborhood Parks Landscape Enhancement. Brandon, please.
Hello. Yes, I'm here to bring this NEGP request from the city's Parks Department. This item is for information, discussion, and potential action, and staff has not received any public comment. So this is a request mildly similar to a request that was approved by this commission last fiscal year to help replace trees this time that were damaged in some of the storms over the past month or so. To date, the city has lost roughly 200 trees throughout the city, parks, Civic Center Plaza, and other portions of city maintained areas of Old Town. So the request that city's park staff is requesting would to replace roughly 150 trees to be replaced within 14 different various neighborhood parks within the city. The cost estimate would range roughly around $200 per tree. Although this funding will not cover the full cost to replace all the trees, it will help soften some of the impact to the parks budget and assist in also reviving these parks tremendously. You've seen in your packet, these are the 14 neighborhood parks. It's very difficult to see on the screen, but these are the 14 neighborhood parks that would receive the trees that would be replaced in the specific locations. With that, it is recommended that the Neighborhood Advisory Commission review and approve the request from the Parks and Rec Department for the allocation of NEGP funding in the amount of $15,000 for landscape enhancement to storm damaged neighborhood parks throughout the city, specifically 14 neighborhood parks to receive this funding. With that, I'm now open this item to the commission for questions, comments, deliberation. Yep, Vice Chair James.
What is the balance of our allotted amount? We get $30,000 allotted each year. What is the balance at this point?
Vice Chair James, the balance is at $30,000 for this
So
fiscal year.
nothing's been spent.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. How did the Parks Department decide upon these parks? Knowing that there's been obviously with those storms, extensive damage to so many different parks. I'm staying near like the railroad park, for example, and that would a lot of damage. So just wondering how they got decided upon to replace those.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you for the question. With respect to the application of NEGP funding and how staff has tried to guide requesting departments as to appropriate projects, there's really a tier structure or typology, if you will, of the different types of parks within the city. Some are specialty parks like the railroad park, as you mentioned. Neighborhood parks are the most intimate of parks, closest to neighborhoods and probably in a lot of people's backyards. And then there's regional parks like the CAP Basin or community parks as a kind of higher level tier. We've tried to guide the Parks Department with the neighborhoods, the Neighborhood Advisory Commission's enabling ordinance and purview as being really closest tied to neighborhoods. And so we've tried to keep them limited to just neighborhood parks. That is not to that isn't to say that the need isn't greater in other parks or there's still a latent need that's out there. It's just that we've tried to have their requests be focused to just neighborhoods.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions before we go ahead? Thank you.
Because of the budget of 30,000 and the request being 15, is there a reason to think that we should budget our 30,000 quarterly? Like we've just had a quarter, July, August, September. That would be 7,500. Giving 15,000 3 months in of our fiscal year seems, that's half our budget. Operation Fix It's going to want money. There's, other things are going to come up, and giving the whole 15, is that going to hurt us 3 months from now, 6 months from now, being able to do other things? Do we maybe trim this to a $10,000, approval?
Thank you, Commissioner Butterwick, members of the commission. That's a great question. And staff did have that conversation with the Parks Department about that. And their response was that in terms of timing and contracting, there's some efficiencies by bulking it together. And there's also the preferred planning season for plants would be this coming fall, as opposed to coming back later in December when we have the possibility of frost. So it's certainly to the discretion of the commission to change or approve an alternative amount if that's the will and desire of the commission. But I would say Jody Pierce, Parks and Recreation Manager, who's been here before and unfortunately wasn't available to come this tonight. His daughter's getting married, so he's away. Had suggested that it would be better to have this grouped in one request rather than they come back in two.
So on that note, do we have a motion to approve this or a motion to amend this request?
Madam Chair, can I ask one more question before we get to that? You mentioned Operation Fix Us. Again, I'm new, so so that's an annual request that's also coming our way, and how much is that generally?
Thank you, Commissioner. With respect to Operation Fix It does not seemingly have the same types of requests as the Parks Department has had. Their projects have been exactly that. They've been projects, and they've been in the creation of some butterfly gardens that have occurred in neighborhood parks, really outside of the scope and budget of the Parks Department. But it's been the purpose of Operation Fix It as a city program that solely operates on community volunteers and community donations. Operation Fix It has utilized neighborhood enhancement grant funds to improve neighborhood parks by leveraging and trying to promote Operation Fix It by using volunteers that she could maybe engage a whole organization, as we did with the Butterfly Park at Rotary Park, where she was able to invite 100 people out and really bring education and awareness to not only her program, but what benefit they could provide to the community by doing a sole project on the day of with community funds that were provided by the Neighborhood Enhancement or Neighborhood Advisory Commission.
So there's it's just case by case and whatever's needed. And so has it been like in the past, like $5,000, or it just depends? Just depends.
I believe the last request by Operation Fix It was roughly for $2,500 or $3,000 for the expenditure of tools for their tool lending trailer. But it hasn't really been it hasn't been as frequent, and it hasn't been as great in the amount as perhaps what we've spent on other programming efforts with parks for specifically tree replacement. I will also say, in fairness, Commissioner Budwig, is that, we really have two prime planting seasons, spring and fall. So it's not to say that the commission couldn't do that. I just think it's really that I'm leaning on the experts of saying they would prefer to do it in the fall. But again, it's to the discretion of the commission as to how they'd like to see fit.
Commissioner Moraldi, I believe over the past 5 years, toward the end of the season, we usually had some money left over that we hadn't used. So I think based on the planning season, it's probably best to give them the amount they need. Thank you.
So then is that a motion to approve this request?
I will make a motion to approve the request by the planning department.
Thank you. Do we have a second motion?
I second it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure to the motion maker and seconder, it's a request by the Parks Department, not the Planning Department. Thank you. Oh, no, you're fine. If you're okay with that modification, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'll take the roll call vote now. Commissioner Budwig,
Yes.
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamb,
Yes.
Commissioner Moraldi,
Yes.
Chair Putman,
Yes, thank you.
and Commissioner Schwartzman.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we've approved the motion for $15,000 to the Neighborhood Parks Landscape Enhancement. Our next agenda item, number 6, identification of future agenda items. Adam, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is a standing item on our agenda every month. If there are any requests for future agenda items by the commissioners, this is an opportunity to make that request of staff, and we can try and plan for a future meeting for those items to be addressed. If there's any desire from the commission to have a specific item, I would just ask for you to speak to those items now.
I would like to hear further about any additions for the Phoenix Rising Stadium, if we have any additional information on that when they came to present, and just seeing where that stands.
Thank you. Were there any other items? Okay.
All right. Agenda item number 7, staff updates. Adam, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. In terms of staff updates, just want to bring to the attention of the commission, you as well as the rest of the community will be receiving their voting pamphlets in the mail in early October for the one item on this year's election for Scottsdale, which is our general plan 2035. As you may recall, we did have Commissioner Moraldi serve on the General Plan Citizen Review Committee on behalf of the commission. And just wanted to bring you all to have awareness that this is going to be out in the community. I can't advocate on behalf of the item at this point in time. However, again, wanted to just share with you that if you neighbors or otherwise start asking about the item, if you go to scottsdale.vote, that's where you can gain access to that information item. And we do have information both in English and in Spanish online. Commissioner James.
I gather that the last time that this was voted on, it was not passed, and there was a certain, I don't know, political movement around that at the time. Do we have any idea what the political landscape is at this point, and where this stands, where it's likely going?
Vice Chair James, I would just defer you to your voter pamphlet to look at. Unfortunately, again, the statutes limit me to really what I can say in terms of where we're at. I can say City Council did vote unanimously for approval on this item. And that came off of a lot of hard work by the Citizen Review Committee and a lot of thoughtful discussion by both Planning Commission and City Council. But I think the voter argument pamphlet that will be hitting your mailbox in early October would be something to look out for. All right, next item. Spirit of Scottsdale Award, just to bring you all current with where we're at on our current solicitation for nominations. We've only received one, and there was a series of social media items that have kind of publicized the program. I just want to remind the commissioners that this is an item that we currently have slated for nominations to end in the end of December. And so if you would please be mindful of that as you kind of make your way through the community and see good things happen, encourage people to log on to scottsdaleaz.gov, keyword Spirit of Scottsdale, and we can make nominations there. And then next item, please. Wanted to just bring your attention a proclamation that was really initiated by our Chair Putman with the mayor's office, and would turn it over to you, Madam Chair, to talk to it if you'd like.
Great, thank you. So as most people know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Most people know that the color for breast cancer is pink. I am a breast cancer survivor, but I'm also an ovarian cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in May of 2020 with breast cancer and June of 2020 with ovarian cancer, and reached out to the mayor, Mayor David Ortega, to get a proclamation declaring September Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And I'd love to go ahead and read it to you guys. Whereas ovarian cancer is the 5th leading cause of death among women, and each year approximately 21,980 women will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And whereas due to vague symptoms and the lack of a reliable early detection test, most women are not diagnosed until stage 3 or later, when the cancer has already begun to spread to the lymph nodes and outside of the pelvis. And whereas doctors across the country are currently conducting clinical trials and researching ovarian cancer, but for the time being, awareness through education to the best tool for early detection and an increased chance of survival. And whereas the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition Arizona is organizing a statewide event in September to light it up for ovarian cancer in an effort to promote awareness about the disease that whispers, honor survivors, and remember lives lost by participating. Therefore, I, David D. Ortega, Mayor of the City of Scottsdale, Arizona, do hereby proclaim September 2021 as Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. In Scottsdale, as we light our iconic horse statue at Westworld in teal to increase awareness in the community and honor those who are or have been affected by ovarian cancer. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed and the seal of the City of Scottsdale, Arizona. And so if you guys have some time along the 101, the Westworld horses are lit teal and just honoring all of myself and my fellow teal sisters. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair Putman. Next slide, please. Regarding final staff updates, the next meeting of the Neighborhood Advisory Commission is currently planned based on our normal schedule of Wednesday, October 27th. Now, the smaller text in there will tell you otherwise. The meeting date will likely change. And the reason for that is the space we're currently meeting in is currently going to be transformed a little bit and upgraded to accommodate more enhanced meetings, not only for hybrid meetings, but for in-person meetings. And so this space is going to be shutting down the last week of October through the end of the year. So with regards to that, I'll be sending out future communication, as I try to identify other meeting locations and times for a different time in October. And we'll also, our normal meeting times, as you all may recall, is the fourth Wednesday of every month. For November and December, that means the week of Thanksgiving, week of Christmas. We'll probably have, just look forward, maybe perhaps in your calendars, for other availability times. Typically, the commission has either recessed for a month. Alternatively, there may be some thoughts or ideas. I know Operation Fix It has kind of approached us to see if we would like to engage in a community project. Maybe that could be something we could do in lieu of a formal meeting. And so I'll look to perhaps bring those opportunities back in our meeting in October to consider. But just wanted to get you all abreast on as we look ahead into the remaining part of 2021.
Perhaps, I'm sure there's a lot of technology issues, but it might be nice to meet in a neighborhood, like maybe there's a neighborhood center of some sort or something, just to get us on the road a little.
Sure.
But I'm sure you're looking at.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll definitely look to that. And yeah, we are working with the city manager's office to understand technology constraints and how we're still accessible. There's, again, as we're still in the high transmission of where we're at in the pandemic, we're still trying to allow for the Zoom calls for folks to engage, whether it's through YouTube Live or through our Scottsdale Video Network on Cable 11. So we'll look for those opportunities, but thank you for that.
Adam, what about some of the meeting rooms in City Hall? Because I'm sure they conduct meetings there. Could we not do it in one of those rooms? In the Kiva?
Thank you, Commissioner. It's going to be all based on availability, and staff really just became aware of this meeting space being altered really earlier this week. So we haven't had a ton of time to start looking at that, but we'll definitely try and find an alternative location that might still be as exciting and lively as this space, but in a different location for next month. That concludes staff updates. And Madam Chair, if you'd like to call for adjournment.
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can we take roll call, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
See you in October.